born and raised in boxing. My dad used to buy the papers, talk to me about boxing. Boxing, it was for him, it was like the best part of what he was focused on. I didn't know you were going to ask me that, but I was just talking with some friends while coming here. It wasn't easy because we had two different personalities and we managed in a different way, because at the end of the day, you know, a championship means some kind of dream and hopes to a fighter.
And welcome to the Ring Podcast. I'm Steve Kinn. I'm joined by the head of the WBA, Gilberto Mendoza Jr. And Gilberto, let's get into this. Your father ran the organization for years, 1982, I believe, to 2015. So the obvious question is, were you born into this?
I was born and raised in boxing. My experience go back all the way to Antonio Cervantes, Betulio Gonzalez. We're talking about 76, perhaps. Mm-hmm. I was around. I have memories, but I just can't remember. But then I grew up in conventions and meetings and seeing my father all the way involved.
Now, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in a city named Barquisimeto. That's Venezuela. And then, but I was raised in a different one, which I think I belong from that one specifically because I lived there since I was 2 years old. And I went to school there, everything there. It's called Maracay. That's where I really feel where I am from. You know.
So obviously, you know what your father does at a certain age. When did you start going with him to certain fights?
Well, let me think about that. Well, I was 7. Yeah. I was 6 or 7. Either was, I can't recall at that point, either was, I think it was Antonio Cervantes because my father was holding my hand and one side and Cervantes was the other one. Those days they were the same day of the fights, and I had this this father-son time that I used to share. We used to go to a bakery shop. You know, I used to have like, I don't know, chocolate milk and some kind of pastry. My dad used to buy the papers, talk to me about boxing. He used to talk to me about Jack Dempsey and also about Muhammad Ali those days. So we had that every Saturday. And then I remember going to a weigh-in, and then I asked him, why you don't take me to the fight? But I just can't recall what happened in the fight, but I wasn't in a fight that early.
When you're growing up around this, did you have an idea of what exactly your father did and what was professional boxing?
Well, my father, besides boxing, he used to work in a sugarcane company. He was like a general manager. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of work. So I remember he was doing the sugarcane and the boxing. So boxing, it was for him, it was like the best part of what he was focused on. And it was hard to see what it was. And it was hard to see what he was doing. But I had this, like every child, you have a whole of admiration. But when you see him in the paper, or when you see he goes to like a fight, those days, there were not too many things televised back there, but I used to see him like in a picture with big fighters. So it was like, I couldn't understand specifically, you know, when I said, this guy is president of an international organization, like a president, I said. Right. And then at the same time, he was very disciplined and working for the sugarcane company because I used to go to that and see what he did there. Well, it was 2 different jobs. So yes, it was tough to see specifically what it was.
All right, so putting aside Cervantes, who's the first boxer you remember as a kid?
Betulio Gonzalez and Guti Espada, because they fought, I think, 15 rounds. They had like this back and forth fight, and we went to the hotel the next day, and the way they were bruised and swollen, I can remember that from both fighters, and they were sitting together. And I was asking my father, what is happening here? They fought yesterday, and they're sitting together having breakfast or coffee. I just don't remember it specifically. And I was really surprised about that fight.
So obviously, you go through your education. You must have other dreams of yourself. What did you want to be when you were a kid, though, before you got into boxing?
An attorney. Always wanted to be an attorney. But ironically, I went to school first as a computer science engineer. In where I went, it's called Information Technology Engineer. That was the degree I really got from Venezuela University. But then I went night school to be an attorney, but in Panama. That's a different story.
So how did the World Boxing Association, obviously some of it's by blood, when did you first step into the offices in any type of capacity?
I didn't know you were going to ask me that, but I was just talking with some friends while coming here about it. When I really started, we were looking at the dates. And I went back. I was good with computers. So I helped printing the rankings. Those days you have to print the rankings, send it by mail. I used to print them and send it by mail. I would say it was 80. I was helping the office, like 87, 88. And then I used to like a lot the seminars, either the medical seminar or the official seminar. And because I knew a lot about computers and I knew how to put up, how to use a word processor, which is easy today. People don't think about it, or how to edit a video. Those days it was different, but I knew how to do it. So I start helping an engineer named Fernando Biso. People like boxing. Maybe you can recall his name at some point. He did big fights. I think he did Tyson fights with Witherspoon. I just don't remember specifically, but he was the one who was preparing the rest of the fish. He was doing the seminar. So he asked me to write down, help him put some pictures on the manual that he was going to use for the seminars, and that way I was involved. And then I was the only one who knew how to edit in the WBA, how to edit videos for the fight and stop them and put questions and just add stuff. Like today, you can do it from a cell phone. That was 88, and that was another time I got involved. And then after going to school, I used to finish around 3. I used to go to the office to see what was going on. And I was, I used to be, I used to see all the faxes and everything. So I used to collect them. And I was like a record keeper for myself. And I had VHS and Betamax, which people, I mean, some people will know, young generation will not know what I'm talking about. And I used to have fight for many people. I started exchanging videos with Alfredo Polanco, with Ruben Gomez. I know you know him. So I started watching fights all around the world, and I started record keeping things. And then I said, well, I'm gonna work with the database software, and I started doing like something very similar to BoxRec, and that was my thesis for the engineer career. At the end, I wanted to have the same concept that today BoxRec has. If just to have a like I said, that was the way I got involved, and officially involved in conventions and having I had like a position with technology those days, helping assisting the rest of the organization. Was 1996 officially, and that started in a convention in San Antonio, Texas. That's the way I recall it.
Yeah, these kids out there don't realize how lucky they have it with YouTube. I do remember being a trader. You had to get DVDs, you had to rip them. So you're working up through the ladder. You're going up through the hierarchy. Then your father decides, okay, all good things must come to an end. How did that transition take place from him being in charge to you?
Look, it wasn't easy because we had 2 different personalities and we managed in a different ways. He didn't want me specifically to be involved in boxing, but he needed me to be in boxing because remember what I told you. His main job was to be was a sugarcane company, huge sugarcane company in a country that had a lot of challenges, specifically financial challenge, economy challenge, and and the politics were changing today. So he was really busy with it, and he was relying on me on certain things. But I had a job also in a rum company, and at some point, I was trying to help as much as I can. Things were not working the way he wanted, and we had some kind of argument. We didn't talk for 3 days. My mom made us sit down and discuss it, and then I said I wanted to dedicate myself to boxing, and I think the organization needs somebody to be present there because you cannot trust the people you have there, because we were in Venezuela those days, and there are people that somebody has to coordinate things the way it happens. How come if I come to work with you, and I will help you and I will meet with you, and that's the way we started. It was with a fight. It was with a fight. But the reason he steps down specifically, and I got to be honest with you, I was not thinking about being president at that time. It was 2015 because of cancer. He was, his prognosis those days, it was like 3 or 4 months already, and I was already really involved with it before because he had cancer in 2 different times of the year, like 2008 or 2009. He was in chemo. So that time I grew up a lot as a director. That time, he gave me a lot of responsibilities, and some kind of power in certain things to to help make decisions, and I was supported by the legal team and everything. But that's the way I think I started being more influential. And I had to report all the time to him. But then, he was really, really, really ill at 2015, and that's when we make the change. Yeah, I don't know if he was gonna keep running it, but that was specifically the reason.
Gilberto, there are 4 major belts that are recognized. In your view, what is the most misunderstood aspect of running one of these organizations?
Well, I think the official, sometimes because of what happens in America, but obviously the 4, the multiple titles has been always the issue. And what we have been attacked about it a lot, because we had this vision of what's going on today, which was my father's vision, that at some point we had to meet, there was going to be a unified champion, undisputed champion, and we call it super champion. Now, you know about it, but then there was the rest of the world who was not going to be that kind of elite that needed to develop the sport, and I also needed an opportunity because at the end of the day, a championship means some kind of dream and hopes to a fighter to improve their lives. So we did that. And that's when we were more attacked, and people were not seeing it. But these days, you see, like, there's certain titles, and certain people that want to have an undisputed champion, but then the world also has fighters that deserve an opportunity. That's I think the most misunderstood part, that we have all sanctioning bodies.
And you are talking about your regular champion, and then there's the interim champion. I kind of understand that, as much as I don't always like it, because here's the problem, and I've always said the multiple belts do need to exist, because I don't think the fighters fight enough. If you had one champion per division, I think in theory, Gilberto, everyone says that's great. Okay, but what if that champion fights once or twice a year, and you're the 6th best guy? You're looking at this going, wait a minute, I may have to wait 5 years to get a title shot. That's what happened to Marvin Hagler.
Yes.
That's where I think the value of the multiple belts actually matters. My only criticism has been, and we've talked about this, is I wish that there was more of a rule that, hey, if you're the regular champion, the super champion has to fight him within a year. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Why is that?
Well, we were legally flexible many times. I understand that, we have been correcting the policy. Actually, they're not regular champions as they used to be before, or, we try to, sometimes we do an interim when there's undisputed. Those days, I think the lack of quality maybe affect us somehow, and the flexibility. It was trying to, it was trying to balance a little bit. what the public was asking for and what we could do, because there's
and also the reality of the current marketplace.
Yeah,
guys are inactive nowadays.
Yeah, and then because I come from your times, right. I come from a time that Duran was a champion and he asked for a special permit to fight a 10-round fight. He either lost that, but he was keeping activity, and I came from a time that even a regional title was not necessary because they needed to fight like a 10-round fight. And I put you an example. If you go back, like when fighters go up in weight, in our time, they used to fight at least a couple of times in the division before getting a title shot. Recently, you see people jumping from super welterweight all the way to super middleweight without having to fight in each division.
They can petition to automatically become number one.
Not fighting enough. Right. And I just don't know if it's way I learning boxing. I think activity is so necessary for a fighter.
Well, as I like to say, activity matters. And I would say this, if every champion made at least 3, 4, maybe 5 defenses, which is never going to happen again.
It's never going to happen.
You would actually have a more free-flowing traffic.
And more
opportunities.
More opportunity for the rest of the rated contenders. Right. Somebody will complaining about it. But the thing is, like, we have a champion right now who fights 2 times a year. Before, you had a champion that defended the title 4 times a year. That meant 2 voluntaries and at least 2 mandatories minimum.
Yeah, and I couldn't give over. As a fighter, I want more belts, because the bottom line is belts make people money. And I don't want a stagnant champion, because now my whole living is derived on a guy that does not fight enough. See, I actually can see both sides of it. Gilberto, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Because you're a little bit before me. You're intimately involved in the business before I was. Did you like the change from 15-round title fights to 12 initially?
For health reasons, yes. I understood that. But I got to come back with my anecdotes. I had this discussion with Alexis Arguello about it. And he was pro 15 rounds. And Manzini was pro 15 rounds. Because they say they have to keep up. They couldn't go out of the gym. And they had to have a more disciplined life with food, with training, with conditioning. And I did like the reduction because it protects the sport, for whatever it is. But the 15-round fights were good. I won't deny that.
Gilberto,
I got adapted to it.
We all do. We're never going back. Joe Goosen once said, he goes, Steve, a good pro can fake their way through 10. They can BS their way through 12. Nobody can do it for 15. It really was a test of your quality.
I got to tell you one thing. I was 14 years old. I had those. I'm just sharing with you all my life in boxing, and I was in the gym losing weight, and I was sitting in the back, and suddenly a guy, storms in the gym with with all this crowded, with all this, entourage. And then he comes, "Are you Gilberto Mendoza's son?" I said, "Yes, I am." So put your gloves, put your headgear. Yeah, I said, what's going on? And then I see my trainer and say, "This is Wilfredo Gomez?" Yeah, Wilfredo. Yeah, he wants to do a couple of rounds with you. And I did the rounds with him, and then we had like 6 or 7. He was just losing weight. He was just doing defense, and I caught him a couple of times. And after we said, he says hello, everything fine, and said, I want you to go to my fight." And just because of the question, I saw him fighting as Rocky Lockridge, and what you said, I don't know how he survived the 12, the 13, and the 14. Right. I don't know how.
Gilberto, think about the history that has been made by the 13th, 14th, 15th round. Ray Mancini against Arguello through 12 rounds. Ray may have been winning that fight. Then you had Billy Conn against Joe Louis. There's Ray Leonard against Tommy Hearns. If that's a 12-round fight in 1981, Tommy Hearns probably wins that fight. Here's another question. We're never going to go back to this. I am a proponent now of same-day weigh-ins, because get this, Gilberto, in my opinion, it actually forces fighters to get this fight in their own weight class. Agree or disagree?
Well, about that, you're right. That makes it fighter. But the medical part is my concern. I got to be, the medical part.
What if a guy gains 30 pounds, though?
Well, and
you create a physical mismatch. See, there's 2 ways to look at this.
But it's not, it's not the case always. That these days they're really professional about the weight, and sometimes, but not there. It's not the case. What this year, and actually in the convention we were discussing, it was Ryan's strategy against David Haney. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to make the weight.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to make the weight because he knew he was going to have advantage when he stepped up in the ring, because Haney, is a hard worker, disciplined. I'm not criticizing Ryan. Right. I thought that was a smart move.
Yeah. But how do we prevent that, though?
We got to get along with the commissions better, with the ABC, I tell you that, and we have to work together. That was one of the main things
In all fairness, Haney and his team could have said, okay, we're going to do a morning of weigh-in. There's ways to figure this out, but I do think when a fighter does not want to make weight and he knows the other guy's going to fight at all costs, there is a competitive disadvantage. But again, this is a tough sport. Final question for you, Gilberto, and I know you may have to be very political here.
Sometimes, yes.
Who's the one fighter that you've seen that you've marveled at the most? You're like, wow, this guy, he's special.
What do you mean?
That you've seen in person. You're like, wow, this guy is really good. Maybe the best I've ever seen. Who's that guy?
Wow, that's a tough question because...
you can name several. I'll make it easier for you.
One of them was Edwin Valero.
Yeah.
I watched him spar, I watched him in amateurs, and the way he fight, the strength that kid had, the footwork that he had, the speed that he had. Then I did like Felix Trinidad a lot, to be honest with you, and Marvin Hagler.
Personal favorite of mine.
Marvin Hagler, definitely, because I saw his the Hamsha fight. That was one of the things, Mustafa Hamsha. But then I watched his fight with Autofermo, the way he came back, and I think they were strong. I got several fighters actually, but natural talent that I saw impressed me for the first time, it was Valero. Honestly, honestly.
Well, Gilberto, we've had many disagreements, but we've always been cordial about it. I really appreciate the time.
No, my pleasure.
All right. That was it. This is the Ring Podcast. I'd like to thank our special guest, Gilberto Mendoza Jr. This is Steve Kim.